Welcome to the Spiritist Companion podcast. My name is Yuri Castro, and I'll be your companion on this journey where we study, reflect, and put Spiritist teachings into practice. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to subscribe and to send this podcast to someone else so we may spread the seeds of light together. In today's episode, we will reflect on a deep teaching, often misunderstood, I think, yet absolutely liberating. When the Master Jesus said, "If anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me." This passage appears in Mark, appears in the Gospel of Matthew, and in the Gospel of Luke, and I prefer the latter because in that one he says, take up his cross daily. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. But what does it mean to carry our own cross in the light of Spiritism? Does it mean suffering resignedly? Does God desire our suffering? Or is there an educational, transformative, and liberating meaning behind this expression? Let's walk together through these reflections. Historically, the cross was an instrument of torture, of pain, and humiliation. So much that if somebody died because they were crucified, the family often did not even go to claim the body. It was such a dishonor, such a shame to have a family member die in that manner. But when Jesus uses this image of the cross, he speaks to people who were deeply familiar with physical and moral suffering. Allan Kardec, the codifier of Spiritism, in the book The Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 24, he recites this passage that we find, like I said, in Mark, in Matthew, and in Luke, and he teaches us that Jesus almost always spoke in symbolic language, pointing to profound spiritual realities. He draws attention to the fact that the cross means resignation, but is not passivity. It is not blind conformity, nor humiliating submission to suffering. In Spiritism, resignation is conscious understanding. And we have an entire chapter on resignation on this podcast as well. The cross can be seen as the symbol of necessary trials, because according to Spiritism, no one suffers by chance. In the Spirit's book, as well as in the Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and so many others, we learn that life's trials are connected to the law of cause and effect, the Spirit's need for learning, and experiences even chosen before reincarnation, because each person carries the cross that corresponds to their stage of spiritual evolution. Trials are intended to develop the intelligence and moral sense of the spirit. This is another thing that Allan Kardec highlights for us. The cross, therefore, my dear friends, is not punishment. It is an instrument of progress. Jesus did not mean for us to carry our own crosses as a mean to cultivate suffering, needless suffering. Therefore, we learn that carrying the cross is not seeking suffering, and this is an essential distinction, I think, that we must make. Spiritism does not teach that we should seek pain for the sake of it, or we should accept abuse, remain in unjust situations, or even glorify suffering. Carrying the cross does not mean enjoying suffering. It means knowing how to deal with the unavoidable difficulties of life with spiritual maturity, without rebellion, without despair, without losing faith. Jesus never taught the worship of pain. Of course not. He taught the meaning of pain. Blessed are the afflicted. The Spirit author Emmanuel, who wrote through the hands of Chico Xavier, he teaches us that the cross is the school where the Spirit learns the lessons it has not yet assimilated through love. In other words, if we always learn through goodness, conscience, and right choices, we would not need to learn through pain. The cross appears when we still resist learning. And I think that's something we can all relate to. We all fight back. We all resist so much that pain becomes this necessary teacher. Jesus is the greatest example of carrying the cross because he did not merely speak about the cross, he lived it. And how did he do so? Without hatred, without rebellion, without a desire for revenge, without abandoning love. Even on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This was not submission, my dear friends. It was moral sovereignty. Jesus showed that it's possible to go through pain without losing spiritual dignity. So what does denying oneself mean? Before speaking of the cross in that famous sentence, Jesus says, "Deny yourself." This does not mean annihilating oneself, but educating the ego. So to deny oneself is to overcome pride, to control impulses, to renounce selfishness, let go of revenge, to choose good even when it hurts. Often the heaviest cross is not outside us, it's within. And that's why another spirit author, this one called Joanna de Angelis, who wrote through Divaldo Franco, she's going to deepen this idea by stating that the greatest crosses of human beings are the disordered passion they have not yet mastered. How many sufferings, let's think here, arise from jealousy, from attachment, from wounded pride, or unrealistic expectations, perhaps the need of control, etc. Carrying the cross is often the work of transforming these inner tendencies. So how can we apply this on our day-to-day? Let's bring this teaching into everyday life. So first, I brought here the cross of family relationships. Living with difficult people is often one of the most common trials because carrying this cross means developing patience, learning dialogue, practicing forgiveness, setting loving boundaries. Family, according to Spiritism, is a sacred field for spiritual readjustment, and it is a topic that we also have talked about in this podcast before. I also brought the cross of illness or physical limitation. So not every illness has a direct spiritual origin, but every experience can generate spiritual learning. Carrying this cross of illness or physical limitation, does not mean rejecting treatment, but maintaining trust, hope, and emotional balance. Allan Kardec teaches us that suffering can be shortened by how we face it. Number 3, the cross of frustration and losses. Yes, losses are part of human experience. So the end of relationships, or financial losses, or unfulfilled dreams. Carrying this cross means accepting what cannot be changed, learning from the experience, and rebuilding oneself without bitterness. Number 4, the cross of constant moral effort. Perhaps one of the most silent crosses is striving every day to become better. So controlling our irritation, watching our thoughts, acting honestly, and maintaining faith on difficult days. This cross, my dear friends, is invisible, but it builds the spirit. Number 5, the cross of time. Some answers do not come quickly. Some wounds take time to heal. Carrying this cross is trusting God's timing. After all, time is the great educator of souls. When understood, the cross ceases to be a burden and becomes a tool for growth. It teaches us humility, empathy, patience, faith, spiritual maturity. Because the spirit that learns from the cross does not need to carry it for so long. My dear friends, carrying one's cross is not meaningless suffering. It is understanding the meaning of suffering. It is not resignation out of weakness, but acceptance through consciousness. It is not giving up on life, but walking forward with courage, even when it hurts. So I wish that we may learn from our crosses without rebellion, without despair, without losing hope. And may we, like our dear Master Jesus, transform pain into love, trial into learning, and the cross into a path of light. And we reach the end of episode number 34 about taking up our crosses daily. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening, and I hope this was helpful. If it was, please subscribe to the channel and share this podcast with someone else so we may spread the seeds of light together. Be at peace, my dear friends. Walk with faith and keep moving forward, one step at a time under the light of the gospel. With fraternal love, your Spiritist Companion.